say that what I love about the people who share their loneliness stories with us is how introspective they all were. So they all recognized the feelings of loneliness, and they had all sought ways to deal with it. Our next story deals with the idea that loneliness is a journey into loving oneself and being happy in your own company. Have a look.
I think for me, I will be lonely in any relationship until I find a way to be happy and content being by myself and loving myself. I grew up in a family where my mother was an alcoholic, and at the time, having an alcoholic parent was a big taboo, so you couldn't tell your friends, you couldn't tell anyone. That sense or that idea that I always had a secret to keep from people made it so that I couldn't open up to people. I think when I felt the loneliest was when I was on my honeymoon and my husband told me he wanted a divorce. I was completely, utterly by myself. And that's actually when I had my severe depression episode. In hindsight, it was the perfect way for it to happen. Because it forced me to go to the hospital and to finally take care of the fact that I was lonely. And I was sad and I wasn't happy and I hadn't realized it. But I don't know that I can have a partner until I learn to love myself, because otherwise I'm always going to project that loneliness on that partner, just like I project it kind of on my friends right now. Right? I rely on them for me to not be lonely. Sometimes I just want to be with a friend and not talk. I just want to be in someone else's presence, and a lot of friends don't understand that. Lack of loneliness should come from within. You have to be content just to be able to sit by yourself, with yourself, and have nothing to do, and just be happy.
Wow. So honest, so introspective. As I said, she knows what's up. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get there. So let's talk a little bit more about loneliness in marriage, because it's like what was said earlier. It's almost harder when you're with someone in an intimate relationship and you still feel lonely.
Yes.
You have stats on this, Karen.
So the stats are 60% of lonely people are married.
Ooh. That's high.
That's high.
Yes, that's high.
And I think completely to your point, it's kind of like, okay, we have something, then we're not going to be lonely. Not necessarily. And I think her point on that was really important, that we need to really get to know who we are and develop our own sense of comfort and learn how to be alone. Learn to like our own company before we can actually really kind of enter into healthy relationships. So I think she said some very insightful things. So 60%.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
What's happening in that marriage why loneliness is occurring?
So if you kind of think about this whole topic, is that we are built for relationships. We are absolutely built for relationships, and not just any kind, meaningful relationships. So to have people in your life, you don't need a lot of them, but you need at least a couple people that you can really share with what's on your your thoughts and your heart. And it's kind of like the things that you'd actually write in your diary. That's kind of how I describe it. The things that you would put in your diary. Do you have at least 1 to 2 people in your life that you can actually share that content with? That's a kind of meaningful, rich kind of connection that we actually are built for.
Okay.
So if you don't have that, then in a marriage, then that's where the feeling of loneliness is going to happen.
A couple of tips for where to start, though, if you are in a marriage and you're lonely? Start
what I call low risk. So low risk would be things like talking about the NBA champions. Not to bring that up again, but why not? Because we're very excited in Toronto. But seriously, no, honestly, it's like these low risk kind of things that are. It's kind of like it's not as scary. Okay. So start with what I call low risk topics.
Yes.
Start having fun. Start doing things together.
Okay.
Okay. For a lot of couples, when you start feeling like you kind of do this, which is exactly the opposite with what you actually want to do. So actually just spend time. A lot of people actually connect through physical activity. Go for a walk. Okay. Walk the dog. And then you could do counseling. You'd write books, or read books, or you could write books too. But you could read books. Podcasts is another one that a lot of some of my clients are doing, just to kind of have something that they can be listening to and having that kind of connection.
Okay, you got to make that connection.
Yeah.
Ami, I want to talk to you a little bit about loneliness, because you want to sort of look at different kinds of loneliness within a marriage.
Karen spoke about people who need 1 or 2 very good friends. And on that, it has been said that those people know you really well and still love you.
Yes.
I found in my clinical practice that people can have two sorts of loneliness in an intimate relationship. One is reactive. Something happened. You didn't like the way your spouse or your partner behaved, etc., etc. That may be short-term or long-term. The more problematic one is what I termed essential, where the loneliness is intertwined in the person's personality, and he or she comes into the relationship a lonely person. And I've seen couples where it doesn't matter what the spouse or the partner does, and they are still very lonely. Unfortunately, that loneliness can affect a lot of areas, including cause sexual dysfunctions. I want to talk a little bit about the screwed up values that we have in society, where people, and I've grown up like that, and I'm sure that the audience as well, where people are told, proceed and succeed and go up the ladder, and that's the most important thing, and that comes at the expense of intimate relationships, and then they fall apart. Clint Eastwood, the actor, who didn't just know how to shoot bad guys, was also a wise man, and he said, there's only one way to have a happy marriage, and when I find it, I'll get married again.
Right, right. Okay, so it's about the intimate connections over everything else, not so much
Absolutely.
about climbing up the ladder, and really good tips for how you might accomplish that.